epidemic here in Ohio. My question is, will you please cut off the source?
Yeah.
My question is, will you please cut off the source?
Yeah. I will cut off the source. Build a wall. I will cut off the source. Yep. Good question. Very well asked. Thank you very much.
4 a.m. Columbus, Ohio. A hospital in the dark. A trusted director under surveillance. Fentanyl hidden inside medical shipments. Locked operating rooms. Organs routed through cold storage and night trucks. Patients who never came back. For 9 years, fentanyl, stolen organs, and planned killings hid behind hospital walls until agents walked in and the nightmare finally surfaced. If you want the full investigation, hit like so this story reaches more people.
On the drug dealers, we're wasting our time. Just remember that. We're wasting our time. And that toughness includes the death penalty.
12 kilograms of fentanyl hidden inside a hospital safe, run by the woman trusted to protect the sick and the elderly, while patients vanished behind her doors. This wasn't a street corner stash. This was a medical office, turned into a harvesting ground. This wasn't danger coming from the outside. This was murder, stolen organs, and betrayal wearing a white lab coat. If you want to see how deep this network truly went, we go deeper.
Some of the worst people on earth, and illicit drugs decimated American communities and left us with the largest law enforcement challenge in our country's history, and hopefully will always be the largest.
4:20 a.m., Columbus, Ohio. The parking lot of the private hospital was silent, only a few lights on. Seconds later, the silence was broken. FBI and DEA agents stormed through the entrance, their voices sharp and controlled. Boots hammered the floor, radios hissed, the entire building tightened with fear. A place meant for healing suddenly felt hostile. Agents climbed to the second floor. The director's office was locked. A steel hammer pounded the door, shattering wood and bending metal. Inside, it looked normal. Family photos, flowers, a clean desk. But behind that calm exterior lay something dark. A heavy safe. Cutting tools pierced through the thick metal. When it opened, the air changed. Inside were 12 kilograms of fentanyl, sealed blocks stacked like cash, a pistol, a locked telephone. A few minutes later, the hospital director, 48-year-old Amina Hassan, was handcuffed, her white lab coat hanging loosely. The nurses stared, speechless. 9 years of trust, gone in a single morning. If you want this investigation to reach more people, especially families who still trust their hospitals, hit like now. Comment truth if you believe this raid was only the beginning. For years, the hospital looked peaceful. Patients waited quietly. Nurses moved through clean hallways, and families trusted every smile. No one imagined a criminal operation was running behind those doors. There were no gang signs or street dealers. Everything appeared professional. Yet every 7 days, fentanyl and heroin entered the hospital disguised as medical supplies. Staff never said drugs. They used the code phrase, special weight loss medicine. Small white bottles moved from room to room, handed to unsuspecting patients, each one containing enough fentanyl to destroy whole neighborhoods. Financial records revealed the truth. The hospital ordered 10 times more supplies than needed. Midnight shipments arrived with perfect labels, sterile gloves, surgical gowns, lab equipment. Inside were bricks of pure fentanyl. Parents brought children for treatment. Older people came for blood tests. Workers trusted the hospital with their lives. All the while, a second business, a criminal business, was growing inside the building, hidden behind clipboards, ID badges, and polite smiles. Amina Hassan wasn't running healthcare. She was running a drug pipeline, using the hospital as cover and using patients as shields. Tap like if this truth should not be ignored. Comment, protect if every hospital should be checked. The most horrifying part wasn't the fentanyl. It was how the hospital learned to kill people legally on paper and harvest their organs without suspicion. The victims were the forgotten. Elderly patients with no relatives, homeless individuals, and accident victims sedated before they could speak. They were targeted because no one would question their disappearance. Inside a hidden operating room, agents found a system designed to make murder look legal. Patients were marked critical on arrival, and within an hour, paperwork declared them unlikely to survive. 2 signatures, a doctor and a manager, approved emergency organ donation. Many victims never regained consciousness. A corridor missing from all official maps led to a secret surgical ward. Bright lights, metal tables, and no intention to save lives. Records listed bodies only by numbers. No families, no consent, no medical history. When analysts reviewed the files, the scale shocked everyone. 315 surgeries in 9 years, many with no death or burial records. Causes of death were vague, never mentioning organ removal. Harvested organs were moved in refrigerated containers labeled donated material, emergency, blending into medical shipments as money flowed back through cartel routes. CJNG, Sinaloa, the hospital had become part of an international trafficking network. A place meant to heal had learned to make death look official, turning human beings into commodities with a signature. If this illegal organ network chills you, hit like so more people see the truth. Comment never if every life deserves protection. Once Amina Hassan was in custody, agents realized the hospital was only the opening crack. Maps in the federal command room showed clinics, warehouses, and businesses across Ohio, all tied to the same network. The order was simple: strike everywhere at once. Before sunset, unmarked convoys moved across the state. Armored trucks appeared behind pharmacies. Helicopters circled silently above frozen streets. Inside a private clinic, 2 agents broke through the back door. The waiting room was empty, but the basement was not. There were locked refrigerators, packed with sealed containers. Labels said medical samples, but the smell of chemicals was strong. On a table lay surgical tools already cleaned, ready for the next procedure. At a warehouse near the river, the situation was different. Men with guns waited behind stacks of crates. When federal teams approached, gunfire erupted. Bullets struck metal. Sparks flew from doors and concrete. Agents took cover behind vehicles. Commands were clear, sharp, without panic. A flashbang exploded through a side window, lighting the room with white heat. The gunfire stopped. On the far edge of the city, a refrigerated truck tried to escape. Its engine roared and smoke poured from the exhaust. It crashed through a gate, heading toward a highway. 2 federal SUVs accelerated, blocking it at the last moment. Tires screamed. The truck skidded sideways and halted. When the doors opened, agents found boxes packed with cash and sealed medical coolers. Inside the coolers were human organs wrapped in plastic and ice. At the home of a police officer, agents found large amounts of cash hidden in ceiling tiles. At the bank director's house, they discovered safety deposit keys and documents showing money transfers to offshore accounts. The list of names grew longer by the hour. By nightfall, dozens of people had been arrested across the state. Evidence filled trucks and tables: drugs, weapons, financial records, transplant files. The raids revealed a terrible truth. A hospital had been the center, but the disease had spread everywhere. The walls that were supposed to protect life had instead protected a criminal empire. Ohio woke to flashing lights, sirens, and the sound of helicopters. The promise of safety had been broken, and now the entire state understood how deep the betrayal had gone. By the second morning, the scale of the investigation no longer looked like a medical scandal. It looked like a system. Amina Hassan had not acted alone, and agents knew it. Hospitals, clinics, warehouses, these were only the surface. To survive for 9 years, the network needed protection at every level. The files taken from Hassan's office were full of names, not just patients or suppliers, but judges, officers, bank officials, inspectors, and community leaders. Some names were written in full. Some were initials followed by numbers. All of them had received payments disguised as consulting fees, special services, or charity grants. Agents began to follow the money. The path was clear, simple, and chilling. Every transfer started with hospital accounts, passed through non-profit foundations, then disappeared into shell companies. These companies had no offices, no employees, no products, only signatures. The signatures were real people, men and women who had sworn to protect the community. A county judge had approved emergency medical transports that were never reviewed. A city health inspector had stamped approval on late-night shipments. An officer had erased records from police computers. A bank director had opened multiple safe deposit boxes under different names. Every person played a small part. Alone, the parts meant nothing. Together, they formed a shield. For ordinary citizens, these were respected figures. They spoke at charity dinners. They shook hands at community events. They posed for photographs with patients and donors. On the surface, they were symbols of trust. Behind closed doors, they signed papers that allowed crime to move freely. In the first 48 hours after the raids, the number of internal investigations tripled. Government buildings were suddenly busy. Judges were called for questioning. Police chiefs opened files they had not looked at in years. Bank managers searched through transactions they once approved without hesitation. The old belief that institutions protected the people now felt uncertain. A meeting was held at the state capitol. The room was full. legislators, hospital administrators, law enforcement leaders. The mood was heavy. Many of them had known Amina Hassan personally. They had praised her work, awarded her certificates, written letters of recommendation. Now, the same people stared at photos of seized organs, drugs, weapons, and cash. "What did we miss?" someone asked. No one answered. The silence was louder than any explanation. In small towns across Ohio, people opened their mail and found news bulletins, church halls filled with older residents who wanted answers. They spoke slowly, carefully, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. One woman stood with a printed photo of her husband who had died in the hospital 5 years earlier. She asked if his files were part of the investigation. A volunteer handed her a phone number. That was all anyone could offer. This was not the fear of gang violence or street crime. This was deeper, more painful. It came from knowing that people they trusted, people with clean clothes, badges, diplomas, had chosen profit over duty. It was betrayal without noise. Betrayal written in forms, stamped by officials, quietly filed away. The raids did not reveal a foreign enemy. They revealed something worse, a network built inside the very institutions designed to save lives. The system had not collapsed from outside. It had been eaten from within. News of the raid spread across Ohio like a winter storm. It began with quiet radio reports at dawn, then moved onto local television by noon. At first, it sounded like a routine police action. But as details emerged, a hospital director, secret surgeries, drugs, organs, people froze in disbelief. Hospitals were sacred places. They were where parents brought their children, where elderly relatives were cared for, where life was saved. To hear that one of these places had been used to destroy life felt impossible. Phone lines exploded with calls. In small towns, older residents gathered in community centers to watch the news. Many of them recognized Amina Hassan from newspaper articles and charity events. She had been admired. She had given speeches about healthcare access. She had received awards. Now her face appeared on the screen in handcuffs. Some people stared in silence. Others cried. Some became angry, not because they understood every detail, but because they felt betrayed. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it breaks, it cannot be repaired easily. In the larger cities, emergency meetings were held at hospitals. Administrators reviewed every contract, every donation, every partnership. Doctors asked questions they had never imagined asking. Could this happen here? Had they missed signs? Nurses whispered in hallways, remembering patients who had not survived, wondering if something had been hidden behind hospital doors. At the Rickenbacker cargo port in Columbus, shipments were stopped. Containers labeled medical supplies were opened and inspected by federal teams. Some were clean. Others contained strange paperwork, mismatched serial numbers, or equipment that did not belong to any known procedure. Every discovery made the story darker. City halls were not prepared. Mayors faced reporters who wanted answers. How did this happen? They asked. The officials did not know. The truth was simple and painful. No one wanted to believe a respected doctor, a community leader, could be connected to violence and greed. In living rooms across the state, older people talked quietly. They remembered a time when institutions were trusted without question. Doctors were heroes. Police were protectors. Judges were wise. Now they wondered how much had changed, or if the truth had simply been hidden all along. At one community gathering, a man stood up. He had worked at the hospital years earlier. His voice shook as he spoke. He said he remembered late-night deliveries, boxes moving through the back doors, and paperwork that did not match. He had assumed it was normal. He had trusted the people above him. The room listened in silence. No one blamed him. Everyone understood how easily trust could become a blindfold. Across Ohio, the same thought appeared again and again. If this happened in one hospital, could it happen in another? That question spread faster than the news itself. People looked at buildings they passed every day, clinics, pharmacies, charity centers, and wondered what they truly knew about them. It was not only fear of crime, it was fear of deception. The danger had been close, quiet, polite. It had smiled at charity dinners and written checks to community events. It had worn a white coat. Ohio had seen many storms, but this one felt different. This storm came from inside, and now the state had to face a painful truth. Trust can be broken without a single shot fired. It is broken by signatures, stamps, and silence. By the third day after the raids, Ohio was no longer the same place it had been a week earlier. The crime scene tape had been removed, the trucks had stopped moving, and the agents had finished collecting evidence. But the damage that mattered most could not be boxed, stored, or labeled. It lived inside the people. Across the state, a quiet panic began to grow. Older residents, the ones who visited clinics for monthly checkups and trusted every doctor's recommendation, suddenly felt unsafe. Community centers received calls from seniors asking whether it was still safe to go to their appointments. Some refused to leave their homes. Others told their children they would rather endure pain than walk into another medical building. Hospitals felt the shock immediately. Dozens of scheduled surgeries were canceled in a single morning. Patients with heart conditions postponed procedures. Families pulled their relatives out of rehabilitation centers, afraid that something might happen behind closed doors. Nurses spent hours explaining that their hospital was not involved, but the words carried little comfort. After all, Amina Hassan's hospital had looked honest too. Doctors, once respected without question, now faced crowded community meetings. Town halls filled with older residents holding photographs, medical bills, and appointment papers. Voices trembled as they spoke. How do we know who to trust? Who signs the papers that decide our care? What else can be hidden inside a hospital? Many doctors felt the weight of these questions like a personal accusation, even though they had no connection to the crimes. Some stood up and tried to reassure the community, explaining procedures, oversight, and regulations. But reassurance was fragile. When trust breaks, facts alone cannot rebuild it. At the state capitol, the governor held an emergency press conference. His voice was steady, but the tension around him was impossible to hide. He announced a statewide review of every hospital, clinic, emergency room, and private medical facility. Thousands of pages of paperwork would be examined. Every unexplained death from the past decade would be reevaluated. A hotline would be opened for families seeking answers. But even as he spoke, people watching from living rooms and nursing homes felt a different truth. Investigations could expose wrongdoing, but they could not erase the fear that had already taken root. Parents questioned whether to bring their children for routine vaccinations. Seniors avoided pharmacies. Church groups organized carpools not for convenience, but so no one had to walk into a clinic alone. Local radio hosts discussed the death of trust more than the raid itself. The shock of the criminal network had passed. What remained was something deeper, a realization that danger had come not from dark alleys or strangers, but from a building people were taught to depend on. Ohio had faced storms, floods, and economic collapse before, but this was different. Those disasters came from outside. This one came from inside, from the very institutions meant to protect life. In the end, the greatest wound left by the hospital was not the drugs, not the stolen organs, not even the deaths. It was the quiet, painful knowledge that safety is not guaranteed, and trust, once broken, leaves a scar across an entire state. When the raids ended and the sirens faded, Ohio woke up to a truth far more painful than any headline could describe. A hospital, a place families trusted with their lives, had been turned into a gateway for drugs, stolen organs, and silent deaths. But the lesson was even deeper. Danger does not always come from the outside. Sometimes it hides behind walls we never question. Across the state, people looked at medical forms, old prescriptions, and memories of loved ones who passed too suddenly. For many, this was the first time they understood how fragile trust can be, and how easily it can be used against the innocent. The shock was real, but it carried a message. We must stay vigilant, even with the institutions we assume are safe. Yet in the middle of this darkness, one truth stood tall. It was the American agents, the FBI, the DEA, the federal task forces, who stepped forward when no one else knew what was happening. They followed the evidence quietly, worked through the night, and walked into danger so that ordinary people wouldn't have to. They uncovered a network that stretched across states and borders, and they did it with discipline, courage, and a commitment to protecting Americans at all costs. In moments like this, we are reminded of something important. The strength of the United States is not just in its laws or buildings. It is in the men and women willing to defend the nation from threats seen and unseen. Because of them, countless victims will finally have answers. Because of them, Ohio can begin to rebuild its trust. But justice doesn't end with one raid. It continues when the public refuses to stay silent. It grows when people demand accountability. And it becomes stronger when stories like this reach every corner of the country. So if you believe the American people deserve the truth, if you believe the sacrifices of these agents must be recognized, and if you stand with justice, hit like so this investigation reaches more people. Comment Justice for Ohio to keep this story alive.